United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. So Bill and Julie are absent, and so we will seat Marcus as a regular member tonight. That definitely gives us a quorum. All right. And George, did you announce the last meeting? Diane Duran sent an email that she is moving out of state next month, so that she will be resigning her commission, her position here on the planning commission.
Okay.
So we're sorry to see her go.
I'll follow up with her to do the paperwork that's necessary.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. And I just want to say publicly, it's been a pleasure serving with Diane. She's been a great member since she's been on the planning commission, but I want to wish her good luck in her new job and in her new state. So, all right. So, since Bill isn't here, I will walk through the minutes. I did look them through, and I did not see any mistakes or any adjustments. Did anybody else?
I didn't, but I'm not as good as you are. You're the pro.
No. So
Take action on anything.
no. I mean, it was so.
Discussions.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye of approving the minutes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. All right. So we have a public hearing, application 23-01, Dorset Crossing LLC. And this is coming back to us. George, if I'm understanding correctly, so, or do you want to give us the background?
Let me read the ad, and,
Yep.
then I'll go ahead and just give you a 2-second summary on it. But yeah, so legal notice posted in the Hartford Current on May 11 and May 18. Town of Simsbury Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at a regular meeting on Tuesday, May 23rd at the Simsbury Town Offices, 933 Hot Meadow Street. In the main reading room at 7 p.m. It's application 2301 of Dorset Crossing LLC, owner and applicant, for a re-subdivision of Lot A on the property located at 30 Dorset Crossing. It's Assessor's Map I-04, Block 403, Lot 013A, and it is zoned PAD, or Planned Area Development. Yeah, so this subdivision you saw in October, and you approved it, and so there was just a little mix-up with the applicant in recording the final plat. So you do have to do it over again. Nothing has changed. If you see from the staff report, I simply changed the date and said it is. But if you just remember what it was, you've got Lot A is a much larger lot out there, and you've got an existing Lot F. Just for reference, it's that front land bay, which we're going to talk about also under item 5 of your items this evening, as part of 4, as part of the Dorset Crossing preliminary plan. We'll talk about that in a second. But for the purposes of this, if you remember, it's the front portion, and they are essentially carving out Lot A for the existing commercial building, and designated a new Lot H on the balance of that land bay. It's consistent with the master plan. Staff didn't identify any outstanding issues. We did recommend one condition that will carry through the site plans and all that, just to make sure when we have planned area developments like this that we have good cross-access easements for parking and those kinds of things. Okay. The applicant is here tonight. Mr. Ziax and Tony are here. I don't know who wants to. I suspect they'll want to keep it brief tonight.
Yes, very. If it feels like a little bit of, I'm sorry, my name's Dave Ziax. I'm a professional engineer with F.A. Hesketh Associates, and if it feels like a little bit of deja vu, we're here, Tony Giorgio shaking his head. But yeah, as George was very polite in saying that we basically messed up. And one of the reasons was, unfortunately back in October, we had a big push to get the subdivision done, because as we explained at the time, we had a very a good buyer, potential buyer of the building there, and with all the financial hiccups going on, that buyer decided to move on, and not make that purchase. But nonetheless, it's still important for us to do this. You'll see when we talk about potential changes to the master plan, it all fits this nicely. So we're just asking you to kind of look the other way and approve this, reapprove it. I promise we will get George the Mylar very quickly after the appeal period goes by in a couple of weeks, and just move on with this. So that's about all we have for tonight.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. I remember this from last October. However, you said our second order of business is to look at a larger development. Would that be germane to this? I mean, should we be looking at the whole thing?
Yes and no. I mean, this is kind of a logical subdivision. Really, I'll speak for the applicant. Really, the reason for this subdivision is there's one commercial structure that is out there today. I think it's 15,000 square feet.
Yes.
That is Lot A. And they really want to essentially create that lot because you've got an existing. What happens in Lot H is going to happen either according to the current master plan or based upon how the applicant wants to change it. So they're really disconnected, actually. They're connected and disconnected. I don't think it's important to the subdivision of the balance of Lot H to A.
We agree with that.
We'll take your word for it. We'll see. We'll see you in a few minutes, won't we?
Well, the point being is the master plan is the master plan until such time as it changes.
Okay.
And this is consistent with that.
The master, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Madam Chair, it is a public hearing. I would just give one call if there anyone else wants to.
Is there anybody?
You know who everyone is. But
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Tom Fay, I'm here actually with Tony and Dave. I respect your opinion on it, but do you think that we should incorporate the testimony and the information that was given in the October meeting into this meeting, since it is a public hearing, and would be officially supportive of the approval of the re-subdivision?
I think that's commonplace. Yeah, I think you can offer it as the attorney to do that.
And I request that we do that.
Sure. So,
And
Would-
say if anyone else wants to speak.
well, but with that, so you're asking to,
So what we would do is essentially we
I mean-
would incorporate that staff report, the application
Gotcha.
submission, minutes from the meeting, your action
okay, okay,
in this record.
for
in
that.
this record.
Correct,
Makes
okay.
sense.
Just want to be clear on
Yeah,
that. Okay.
for sure.
Any other comments?
No.
No? No. All right. Any other discussion?
You need a motion to
Yes,
close
yep.
the public hearing if you're ready to do that.
So, is there any other discussion first? No? Okay, so do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion to close the public hearing passes unanimously.
And staff has offered a draft motion. It's in your staff report, but I did put it on the board.
Okay?
No.
Oh, there it is. So would somebody like to make the motion?
Sure.
If you can move the draft motion as shown. It's
I
okay.
would.
There you go, Joe. There
I
you go.
move that we accept the motion as shown for approval of application PC 2301 of Dorset Crossing LLC,
I would just say, and as included in the staff report.
and as included in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. So we have a motion. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So now we, new business.
Okay, so new business. ZC 23-18 is a technical referral from the zoning commission to the planning commission. And it's also a referral to Conservation Commission and the Design Review Board. So to summarize, Dorset Crossing is a planned area development, a PAD. That means that the master plan is tied directly to its zoning. Most zonings you have just a zoning district, and you don't have a planning process attached to it. In this case, in our zoning, in the town zoning regulations, when you rezone a parcel to PAD, you rezone it with the master plan, and so that's what was done years ago when Dorset Crossing was approved. So the reason it's a referral now is that the applicant has filed an amendment to that master plan. And so we deal with that like it's a zone change. And therefore, it is referred from the zoning commission to the planning commission for your input like it's a zone change. So you are gonna hear tonight, this is preliminary review. So the applicant, I think Dave and Tony are gonna tell you what they're planning to do out there and why they are processing this change. And you're gonna, tonight, you're asked to provide comments, kind of big picture comments. And that gives the applicant the idea, if there's some support, we take that information back to the zoning commission and say, well, this is what the planning commission said, this is what the conservation commission said, this is what design review said. And then they can decide whether there's support, whether they're in the right direction to go through to the final stages. And so we'll do a public hearing at the zoning commission, but it'll also come back to you if there are any changes or if there's any additional input from you. So think of this as a rezoning where you would provide a referral to the zoning commission. But in this case, there's more detail to it. So I think I'll stop and I'll let the applicant team
Explain.
kind of take you through. By and large, it is a change of the northeastern land bay that we just talked about.
Okay.
Let me just, so again, this is the land bay we're talking about, and I'm showing you the existing condition here.
Okay.
And it's a commercial land bay today. And the applicant is proposing to exchange much of that commercial square footage for additional residential units. So with that, I'd offer.
The size of the parcel is unchanged. It's just how it's being used.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. And again, it's essentially it's a 6.35 acre piece of ground. And Tony, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's always good to see you. I am a little embarrassed about the fact that you had to redo what we did in October,
No worries.
but life changes. And part of the reason that we're here this evening is that life has changed dramatically at Dorset Crossing since it was originally approved as a pad back in 2010-11. And as you can see from that particular master plan, we originally expected that the whole front parcel would be commercial office and then some retail and the rest would be residential. Unfortunately, that's just not the way things are today. And when we came before you back in October asking you to consider our re-subdivision, I basically said to you that the reality of the marketplace is that there's no demand for medical office, there's no demand for commercial office, and there appears to be tremendous demand for multifamily. And the statistics are pretty real. The vacancy factor for commercial and medical office is 28, 29, 30%. The vacancy factor for multifamily is about 3%. We currently have in the center of the parcel the development called The Point. There are 168 residential units. George, do you have your little magic thing there? I can figure out how to do this. Yeah. This is The Point, and it was approved, and there are 168 multifamily units with a vacancy factor of 3%. Here is Ojakian Commons, which has 48 units, all of them special needs. 47 of them are occupied by people who have MS or similar disabilities, and one is for a permanent caregiver. Those are all done through CHFA, and they're all basically affordable in that term. Mm-hmm. You recently approved, well, I guess about a year or so ago, you approved another 72 units back here
for Crown Properties, there had originally been 72 units, and that's what they got approved. We're now asking you to consider in this area, the so-called Lot H, the opportunity to develop another 72 units. Perhaps we can show the next slide, which shows what that is. Yeah, we're basically asking permission to exchange out the commercial office and medical office that was originally approved here. It was roughly 40,000 square feet, plus or minus, to allow us to develop an additional 72 market rate apartments, 3 different buildings, 24 units in each building. We believe that there's a need for workforce housing. We believe that there's a need for market rate, age restricted. We're not in a position to guarantee you that it'll be market rate, or it'll be age restricted, or it'll be workforce development, or it will be affordable. I will tell you that in the recent conversations that I've had with prospective buyers, I've shared with them that I believe the town is interested in more workforce housing, more affordable housing, and that when someone comes into this commission with a plan to develop those 72 units, they need to be prepared to talk about that. And I've had no one walk away from that. I mean, everybody understands that this is a social need. The challenge with workforce housing or affordability is the economics, whether you can make the rent work. I'm hopeful that since this is a pad and we've already got a significant number of affordable units, that whoever comes in with a plan to develop this will be able to work with you and staff around some concept that will allow for affordability of workforce housing. And it'll make it just that much more dynamic. But we're asking you to consider having us switch uses. I mean, it's not a new use. It's already always been a use. There's residential as part of it. We're asking you to consider allowing us to look at Lot H as a potential residential development with an additional 72 units. And that's essentially our request. In order to change the master plan, we have to go through this process. We met with Conservation Inland Wetlands last week, and we went through the same process. We did the same thing with zoning. And now we're kind of dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's so that everybody understands what the plan is. Okay? I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Just for you to kind of think about where we are. This is a preliminary informal review. You're not going to make a formal motion. You're just going to talk. You may ask the applicant questions about why, or however you can go through that. But we will come back once the zoning commission schedules the public hearing on the master plan. We will come back to you and ask you to make a formal planning commission referral with motion and findings and those kinds of things.
All right, so this is exploratory, or preliminary with us. Okay.
And it
Like
also
years
gives-
ago, we saw the.
Oh,
plan-
yes.
yeah.
My gosh.
We were shown some plans that we all fell in love with. It didn't materialize, but
Well, it's all designed. It's designed not only
Yeah,
to
this
help
is-
you understand what we're doing, but also to help us
Right.
yeah.
hear what some of your concerns might be as we're going through the process.
Well, I would just like to start by confirming what you said you told your developers, that it will be looking for some type of affordable housing. Now, I don't know what you use two different words, workforce housing and affordable. Affordable housing goes to 90% of median income, which I've always thought was also workforce housing too. Is there a distinction in your mind?
Well, it depends. I mean, workforce housing has become the more accepted term to deal with housing that's going to be rented at below market rate. Simsbury has its own affordable housing regulation, and it requires something like 20% of the units to be put aside based upon income levels. The state of Connecticut has its own affordable housing regulation called 8-30G, and it has a whole series of steps.
We're very familiar with that.
Okay,
And
so-
that's the rope that hangs around our neck.
Well, I don't want to put a rope around your neck.
I mean, obviously, we would want it to be according to 830G, just because it gives us more flexibility to allow development the way everyone would like to see it, and that is, the town of Simsbury has no problem with affordable housing. What they have a problem with is housing that doesn't have setbacks and things. So, actually, right down the street from this is that Simsbury Housing Authority, as you well know. No one has a problem with that, and that's very affordable. That is affordable with a capital A.
I think what we're looking at here is the opportunity to develop 72 units of housing. The model that you're seeing, or the concept that you're seeing, are basically studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units. There are 24 units in each building. They're 3 stories high. I think that when I look at Dorset Crossing and I see that we have 166 units of market rate and 48 units of affordable, that we've tried to do a pretty good job in addressing the needs. Obviously, we have another 72 in back that I believe are going to be market rated. This 72 will probably be a combination. And I'm hoping that when we find a developer who wants to build these units, that developer will sit down with you and with zoning and with planning, with the staff, and try to come up with what's a reasonable number for those 72 units. Whether it's 10%, 12%, 15%, it's got to make sense for the community, and it's got to make sense for the developer. No one wants to put a series of regulations on anyone and then have the thing fail. But on the other hand, in this day and age, with affordable housing and workforce housing being in such short supply, you have to have the conversation. And the various people that I've spoken to, and I have several that are interested, but we can't do anything until we know we have the units, they have not shied away. And all of them, I would add, have in other parts of the state and other parts of New England done affordable and workforce housing. So it's not as though they're inexperienced in this area.
So I'm just going to ask George a question. With our comments, obviously we're not making a motion and we're not putting any requirements on anything. I just feel that when this comes before us again, that would be within our realm, is to be saying, well, approval pending a certain amount of affordable housing.
So the devil's in those details, of course, and that will be appropriate. That will be appropriate for this body to make that recommendation as a referral back to the zoning commission. Yeah. For now, we ask the developer to consider an affordable component. Sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah.
The developer's saying, yes, we
Yes,
want to
we-
consider that. The question is how close can we cross the bridge from where we are today to
Right.
down the road, before zoning makes its final decision. So that would be reasonable.
And we're not
That's
opposed.
my only real input.
We're not opposed to it. I mean, I think that, as a member of this society, we really need to provide housing for policemen and for teachers and for first responders and things of
For
that
the people who
type.
work here, yes.
And the current market rates sometimes are prohibitive. I'm hopeful that when we get to the point when you've decided that these 72 units make sense, and your recommendation includes an awareness and an effort to create some affordability, that we can find someone who wants to come in and is comfortable with that. because it's part of what we're trying to do. I mean, I've had many of your townspeople stop by me, I've been around a long time, and say, Tone, can't you find somebody to do an affordable project? And I said, well, I'd love to find someone, but until, as George said, the devil is in the details. Until someone sits down and says, I can build 72 units, and this is what my income stream will be, and if I have to put a certain number aside to deal with affordability, then that's what the new income stream is going to be. Does it work economically? And that's unfortunately what it boils down to. I mean, it's wonderful to have all these regulations and all these aspirations, but if they don't make any sense, if you can't do it, then that's a problem. So all I can do as the owner of the property and the master developer is to assure you that any of our conversations have always included the notion of affordability.
Right. And I have that same thought, Holly, just the fact that.
Yeah,
we're
as you know, it's a
talking about because
hot
it
button
needs to
here.
be,
And
yeah.
this is, and we have, here in our development of the POCD and the affordable housing plan that we developed last year, that is something that the board has, that this commission has spent a lot of time trying to get to, trying to find good solutions, win-win solutions. I have one other question. Would I be correct in assuming that this has a higher density than the other development because it has the same number of units as the other one that's next to it, but it's a smaller size?
I think, well, David, you might be able to answer that better than I can. The difference between the one that Crown Property had approved in the back here, you had two separate parcels. One was a little over, 4 acres, David?
Yeah.
And the other one was about 1 acre and a half, 2 acres, something like that?
Roughly 2 acres.
Yeah. So you've got roughly 6 acres, and you've got, as you can see, two relatively different types of buildings. I mean, they're longer and they're bigger. Here we've got.
Excuse me, that's combined 72 units in those two buildings?
Yeah, there's 40, I believe there's 40 here and 32 there.
Oh, I had that wrong. I thought the parcel between those two had 72 units.
No, this has 160.
Oh, okay. All right.
It has 166, and it's about.
So are we
10
talking
acres.
about the same elevation, 3
No,
stories?
this is much higher. This is
Okay.
kind of in the middle, and this is right next to the office building. It's a relatively flat, rather attractive parcel, and what David has done is he's laid out 3 buildings with sufficient parking, with some open space, so that this will appear to be less dense than you have back here.
Yeah.
So
and it's important because this is the front door of the development.
But
So you want it to look nice, yeah.
Yeah, and we're still hoping that, I mean, we're, 2 other things I should have said. We had originally 14,500 square feet approved on this Lot F, which was originally going to be a Walgreens store. And Walgreens decided as a corporation to buy the Duane Reade Pharmacy Group in New York City, and all of their capital went to New York City and nothing was left here. And now they've changed their model. And we're also asking, in addition to consideration of 72 units, we'd like to include in this medical office building an opportunity to do some retail space. Because we think that when we have 166 here and 48 there and another 142 residential units here, the demand for retail is going to increase. And I'm guardedly optimistic that we'll finally see this develop. We're just showing 2 buildings, but technically speaking, it could be 1 building as it was originally, or it could be 2 or 3 smaller buildings. But we'd like to add the retail component to the office building. That's the second part of our request.
Madam Chair, they're roughly the same densities. Looks to me like the proposed land bay of 72 is about 15 units to the acre.
Yep.
The existing lot B looks like about 16-ish. And that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
the kind of density
Okay.
you get with that product.
Right.
I guess I heard the numbers wrong. That's what I was trying to
Well, that's
clarify.
okay. I'm here to answer your questions.
And you said you've already been to the design review committee on this?
No, we haven't. The design, I chuckle a little bit because when one of your previous planners and my team and I worked on developing the pad. As you may recall, we were the first planned area development in Simsbury. And we put together these very rigorous regulations. And of course, in order to change the concept plan, you have to go through all these steps. Well, we have to go before design review, but there's nothing for design review to see because there's no elevation, there are no buildings. But we'll go through it. However, assuming that you act favorably with your recommendations and the zoning commission decides to approve this, whoever comes in with a product, who comes in with 72 units on lot H, they will have to go through the entire process of design review and planning and zoning and conservation so that you'll all get a chance to look at it. And of course, before it even gets to you, it's got to go through me. Because we've invested a lot of time and a lot of energy out there over the last 10, 12 years. And as I get closer to the front of the project, of the community, I want to make sure that it's going to look the way I want it to look.
So your original intention was that commercial would grow and you'd expand into that space?
When we started this back in 2010, St. Francis Hospital, as you may recall, wanted to plant a flag out there. And they went into that first building and they leased about 90% of it. But there's been some changes, not only in St. Francis and in Trinity Health, but there's been a lot of changes in the medical business world. And I still serve on the St. Francis board, but they have new leadership, they have new priorities, and they're looking south of the city versus north of the city. I was excited, quite frankly, when the University of Connecticut decided to open up their place in Andes, because I think this end of the state needs to be served. And I don't know whether there'll be any interest on the medical community to go back into 15. I mean, we have a fully designed radiation center. I mean, you could go in there and do MRIs and you could do X-ray and everything else, but there's no
A
demand.
number of people would have preferred Yukon in your place and Trader Joe's over where
Well,
Andy's used to be.
I was
Just throwing that out
That comes
there.
up in every meeting.
Not that, and people say that to us, like we actually have some control over that, which we don't.
I would have been very happy with UConn in my building, trust me. Because right now it's about 20% occupied.
Yeah.
I rattle around in there with the other tenant. But no, I think that, we were pioneers when we went out here. This was an old gravel pit that we mediated. And the first new investment since we did this was Big Y, and that's only been recent. And they did the new Dunkin' Donuts. But I mean, I think we're closer today than we've ever been to realizing what we all hoped when we got there. Okay.
Any other questions? No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have your name and company?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony Giorgio.
Thank you very much.
Right.
And David Zayak
Yes.
and attorney,
John Fahey, F-A-H-E-Y.
wonderful, thank you.
All right. Thank you. So we can now move into the POCD.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
George, do they have a certain amount of time to get the Mylars to you? Just at
90 days.
90 days?
Okay.
All right.
I am sure. I'm sure that.
It's gonna take 90 minutes past that,
I don't know.
the date that George told me the legal.
Tony, do you control Wagner's property also?
I talked to one of the, I think it was one of the Wagner. We just couldn't put anything here. We're just too far out ahead of our skis. But I think Wagner's property is under consideration for something, as is the large piece
between the skating center and us. So I think in a few years, that's going to be a very vibrant area. Now that they're adding sidewalks and everything else, it'll be, it'll be great for people up here to be able to go right into the merchants down the road.
Yeah, I think the whole,
You could spin off from the energy of Big Y.
but yeah, I think every decision that's made has to consider the big footprint.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right.
I have a starting tonight on page 79.
Yep.
Is the Promote Economic Development chapter. So I think we started off our conversation last time. I think Marcus had the observation that sort of the sidebar and the use of the DEI logo and stuff here just sort of didn't seem quite right. So we're going to go back and take a look at that. And then also circle the word in the bottom paragraph on this page, the word appropriate, which sort of seems a little out of place there. I'm going to do a word search throughout the document for the word appropriate. It's easy to use, but it may have big implications, and just make sure that, we're using it. I was about to say appropriately, but that's be silly.
Can you just not put a word there at
I
all?
would say
Yeah,
take
I
out
think
the
I think
appropriate and just put
Promotes economic development.
economic development of the community, and I think that would probably be the easiest.
Yeah.
And I think that went back to earlier plans where there was quite a bit of focus on that particular issue, and I think, again, we can get rid of that here.
Okay.
Anything else on 79?
Nope.
About 80 and 81?
The top left survey, that's based off of the question that's in the top left, that's in the 2022 online survey, that's the thing that we went over earlier? I think it's in one of these earlier pages? Or no?
Yeah, it is summarized earlier in the plan, correct,
Okay.
yes.
This is really picayune, but the first sentence at the POD workshop meeting, can you just say workshop at the POD? Okay.
That's the one, it comes up a couple times, that phrase.
Or workshop meeting, yeah. So I had down where it's one of the few in black.
Yep.
Residents also indicated they don't want economic development for the sake of taxes. And Simsbury has to attract the right kind of development.
Okay.
And what I put down is, should we be specific, development that embraces the town's blah, blah, blah? I mean, should we explain that more? I don't know, I just felt like what's that mean? Attracts the right kind of development? Well, it could be misconstrued.
No, I think, but we're also talking here in the plan about the concept of sense of place.
Right.
And ambiance. And so I think we just say, Simsbury wants to attract development which enhances.
Which, exactly, that's what I was thinking, just explain that, okay.
I'm looking at Simsbury should attract businesses who are attracted by the amenities, location, and quality of life. Do you equate business with quality of life? Or is that to me, that's more of a residential consideration.
Where are you reading from, Don? Where on the page?
Right here.
Oh, up above.
Yeah, it's the third bullet point. Where are you?
Page
Oh,
8.
yeah, I didn't like that whole section.
The third bullet point there?
Yeah, third bullet point.
but the
Attract
quality-
businesses that are attracted by the quality of life.
Well,
I mean, but that's what participants felt.
right.
So, but I just thought it was, to me, it's awkward. I mean, business and quality of life, or
Well,
it's more residential.
Well, I think
Well,
what it's
no,
saying.
we've actually talked about that quite a bit in other meetings where one of the attractions for businesses here in Simsbury is that they can offer a nice quality of life for the people. You can walk and
I see what
So,
you
for
mean.
example, I
see what
feel
you
that
mean.
way about my little
Okay.
business. I moved
a
it
business that improves the quality of life
for the residents.
Okay.
So,
All
for
right.
their workers. So, for example,
Right.
Yeah.
I moved from another
I know
town
what you mean, though.
to my business
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
and I love working downtown because it's great. It's
I think we put the
I get it.
phrase-
Okay, I misunderstood that. I thought it was implying that you'd open up a business because Simsbury has good quality of life.
If we had for their employees at the end of that sentence,
Yeah.
it works.
that probably
Yeah.
would work. Yeah, exactly.
Anything else on 80 or 81?
I think there's a major attraction of this town.
At some point in the future, it may make sense for Simsbury to review this approach. I wrote a note. I mean, the organizations or the way they interface.
Yeah.
I'm not clear on how they interface, but I don't know right now.
It's a delicate topic, I think, to bring up, but I think Simsbury has 3 organizations in charge. Does it actually have anybody in charge?
Right.
I've often wondered the same thing.
So I think I don't want to criticize because I think they're all doing good work. The issue, in a sense, is,
Who's driving the train?
and it could be the Board of Selectmen that's driving the train because sort of everybody sort of reports to them, but they've got many other things on their plate. So when I said review this approach, maybe the thing is just need to add a few more words in there. Review the approach of 3 economic development agencies. That's really the issue here.
So can I ask a question about that?
No. Okay.
Well, no, because I don't disagree with doing that. But is that our purview or is it another board's purview? Like how, because I think the perception, I think, around town is that not everyone knows necessarily about the 3 or what the 3 do or how the 3 work together. And should the 3 be working together and should we be, so I like that we could make that an action step, but is it ours or is it, do you know?
Yes.
Well, the bullet says Simsbury. It doesn't say us to do that.
I know,
We're
but who in
just saying
Simsbury? I don't want an action step that says Simsbury. We have to have somebody attached to doing it.
BOS in?
I think the issue I think it's appropriate that we could call this out and say,
Okay.
hang on a second here, is this going to work well for us or as effectively as possible over time? But who's going to take this up is not us. It's the Board of Selectmen. It could be any one of those 3 entities. We're not going to meddle in that. But I think if the plan is going to promote the concept of economic development, I think you have to have a vision, you have to have organizations, and you have to have tools.
Right.
And the organizations right now is, you could say, well, we've got so many agencies, we should have a 4th or a 5th. And maybe not. We should have a well-functioning approach of organizations, whatever that might be. So I think it's okay for us to point it out if you're comfortable, but I think the responsibility falls to probably the Board of Selectmen.
Should we call that out? Should we say it makes sense for Simsbury's Board of Selectmen? Because as you mentioned,
Well, I think it would go in the action steps, wouldn't it? And we'd have
Oh, okay.
BOS. I don't know if I'd want to call it out here, but we would put it in the action steps and have them.
is that what you're suggesting,
One of
that
the
it belongs
action
over
steps.
there?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, I think you're right, Holly. We
I'll
can
move
put
to
it-
action step?
It's number 1 in the action step. The leaders, the Board of Selectmen, and the partners are those 3 agencies and the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah.
Sorry, it's been a few weeks since I've read.
See, I think that
Oh, yeah. Board of-
it seems to me that one of the reasons that you have kind of a series of engaged entities in economic development is perhaps because maybe it's because we're not exactly sure what our economic development strategy actually is. And I mean, do we talk a little bit about perhaps working to develop a clear economic development strategy that might help better define what those entities' roles and responsibilities are?
And that's on page 84, number 2.
Okay. A4 number. Yes.
Asked and answered.
Okay.
Anybody want to go for number 3 on the list?
Should we consider the merits of adopting a plan development? No. Okay. I think it's important because I think there is confusion, and I think if we, yeah, I think.
And I think that we may end up after a review in exactly the same place, but it will have been a conscious decision by the Board of Selectmen or others. We're comfortable with this, we're gonna keep on this road. That's okay. It's not,
Dumb question. Where is that on the, you're talking about page 82?
84.
84.
Oh, 84. Oh,
Action
okay.
steps.
84, number
Oh,
Number
yep.
1 and 2.
Sorry. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Well, there it is, written clearly.
and you shall
Shall
find.
find.
Anything else on 80, 81?
No, I didn't.
How about 82 and 83?
I will be fussy. The box at the top, all the words are divided
Yeah.
kind of clumsily, so maybe you need to expand the box so that the line breaks are a little more,
Yeah, I think that's what we decided earlier on.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to get everything. in-
Yeah, I get it, and then Word
Doesn't work.
does crazy stuff, so, I think the text box needs to be,
Wrestle it to the ground.
I know, you'll handle it. Is that also on 84 somewhere? Is that one of the actions? I'm just looking here, so anyway, thank you.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
You got me. Have to answer in the form of a question, by the way. In terms of the map on 83, there's really no new economic development areas that are identified on this map. These are the areas which are zoned for business, as we discussed here this evening. There's land in the Hoskins area, the northern part of town, which still is available for development. And there's a lot of redevelopment opportunities in other areas. So I think focusing on redevelopment and development or occupancy in the spaces we've got is probably our strategy for the next foreseeable future. Then anything on 84?
So number 3,
Yep.
it ends with So it was like, is there something with,
I don't think we need to do with.
okay,
Just a PDD to replace the PAD.
regulation,
It's a
period.
very similar
Okay.
kind of approach to what you guys have decided, but I would say that the main difference in my view is that the PAD regulation, the process was described here tonight, are these standards and design guidelines that they then have to adhere to years later and go back and change. A PDD approach is pretty much site plan approval through a zone change process. So you get all of the control, but you don't put regulations in place that are going to be applicable 5 years from now or anything else like that. It is, you're approving this. If they want to modify that, yes, they do have to come back, but they will give you the circumstances at that time and change it. So we're not bound by the way the market was, gosh, it's almost 15 years.
15 years
yeah.
before 13.
And so it's a little bit kind of more flexible, and I think it might be worthy of consideration and looking at that.
Okay.
So on page 85 is now we get into the housing needs chapter. I do have sort of a bigger picture question for you before we get started on this. We've talked about how important this housing conversation is, yet in this section of the plan, it ends up being, I think it's the third or fourth topic. Areas with a, no, it's the third, I guess. Areas with a sense of place, economic development, and then housing. Is that the right place you feel, or is it, am I sort of overthinking the, George is nodding, okay.
I'm fine
I think
with
it might be. I
it.
think it makes.
I think it makes
Once
sense.
you get here, you're here. I think it's okay.
Right, I do too.
So quite a number of changes in this chapter here overall, simply because of the importance in the last 5 years with housing-related issues, the adoption of the Affordable Housing Plan, and so now that has also been integrated here, and I think sets the stage for the future. Any questions or comments on page 85?
I mean, mine is with the DEI thing in the corner. It's again, like creating a connection that we don't necessarily want to create is really my only thing about it.
Kind of, Marcus, I'm feeling here, though, that I do think part of the challenge in Simsbury is that our lack of housing diversity.
Yeah.
So I think having, maybe it's a chicken and egg thing, right?
Yeah, which and I see exactly where you're coming. Like, if we don't, yes, it can be fine here if it's not in another space. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I think What I'd like to do is, if we're serious about DEI initiatives, we can't talk the talk on DEI without also walking the walk in terms of housing approaches, et cetera. We can't really get to diversity if we only still have one flavor of housing in the community. I'm exaggerating, right? Because we do have more than one flavor of housing, but I do think that these two issues are maybe inextricably twined. So maybe it's understood.
And I can agree with that. It's that we mention DEI almost exclusively in connection with affordable housing. Is the connection that I think we want to kind of stray away from. But outside of that,
You're saying that we're making the assumption that we'd only have diversity if we had affordable housing.
A connection that could be made.
In the past, we only had diversity because of expensive housing.
Yeah.
I mean, we had diversity that could afford that, but not as much diversity as if we opened it up. So that's the connotation, I suppose.
So Marcus, are you saying again with the logo, you're okay with it, or no?
So what you're saying is that if you're defending to put it here, I'm not going to say that it shouldn't be here.
Right.
I'm saying that we can also put it in other places that's not just in connection to affordable housing.
Oh, got it. But didn't you have kind of an objection 2 weeks ago to having it in other places?
So the economic development.
The thing is, when you go through the books of page 79, it's in connection to affordable housing, like making money. And then we mention it earlier in the book, and our mention is affordable housing. So when I see it's like we only mention it in terms of affordable housing or how can we make money off of this.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So where if we can add it like somewhere else so it doesn't just seem
like it's affordable housing, or how do we?
Yeah, but you don't want to overuse it either, right?
No,
because
no.
Then it I don't know if it's impactful if it's over.
If we make that connection somewhere else, if we can make a connection to DEI to something outside of affordable housing, that would kind of quell that concern, because then we're seeing it somewhere else.
So let me back up just a little bit. I mean, I think the thought process earlier when I was crafting the plan was that we had these three overarching themes of DEI, sustainability, and livability. And we were going to kind of highlight these throughout the plan by dropping these logos in where they were sort of applicable. But I think Marcus's point is that if we keep dropping these things in, are we being consistent on where they're dropping them in? Are we diluting the concept of the three major themes, or are we strengthening the concept of the three major themes? So that's a kind of a hard question.
It is.
Well, also you run into the thing, whenever you want to expand the people who are in a certain area, in any way you want to expand that, in any way you want to have more inclusion and diversity, equity, in any town anywhere, the two issues are going to be, well, how can they support themselves and where can they live? I mean, I've moved around so much in my life. These are the two issues. Can I afford it? Can I get a job? If I lose this job, can I get another job? So that's why I think that ended up here, because that is part of being more inclusive, is having opportunities and housing.
I know, but I wonder if we've gone sort of a step too far.
Yeah, okay. Oh, and that's what I think Marcus is saying.
Well, my thought is that we keep putting this in the sidebar, almost like it's a little bit of an afterthought. And I wonder if, in fact, what we could do is find a way to get that concept embodied in an opening sentence in the opening paragraph or something like that, rather than this. I mean, I think that's almost the way that it does get embedded in the POCD rather than the sidebars. So I don't know the right answer here. I just wanted you to know that I think that there could be a couple of different ways to address this. Do you want to continue this approach? Do you want me to try to find ways to integrate this into the actual paragraphs, the introductory paragraph? I mean, it's almost like In that first paragraph, or here on the first page, we could point out that housing is an important element of both livability and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Or taking the sidebar and moving it,
Essentially the same type of concept, putting it in line.
putting it in line, because now and in the future, it could be that the sidebar flows very nicely after that second paragraph.
Because
I like the sidebar.
What was that?
I like the sidebar. I
Yeah.
think.
Right, but it could
And I
be,
like the way it sets up, thematically throughout the PLCD.
yeah,
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of sense I'm having is review the wording here, but leave the sidebars and the logos in place for now.
I think the sidebar is a good visual clue. Where I know we've read this thing cover to cover a few times, but I think some people may not. I'll just put it that way. And I think the sidebar is just a good way. You talk about the symbols up front, and then you find them, and you're like, oh, okay. I'm just pointing to this one because we happen to be talking about it. But to me, I know the way. If I'm looking through for something specific, I can either read the thing cover to cover if I'm that type of person, or I can sort of go through, the table of contents if I'm that, or flip through and say, oh, here's another logo, natural resources. That's important to me. So I think it sort of gets into all the various intelligences of a way a person's going to look at the thing. So I think, to me, the sidebar I think is just another visual clue of where things lie. Now, if there's an issue of where the various logos are put, or whatever we want to call them, then that's a different discussion. But I would hate to lose the sidebar. I think it's a good visual clue for the way some people might look at this.
yeah, I agree.
Got it.
Yeah.
does that sound okay, Marcus?
No, I like the sidebar. I like the sidebar. I never had a problem with sidebar.
Yeah.
Right. Your issue is with the logo.
Yeah, my issue is that
Where it's placed.
I did
Right.
what you were saying. Like I go through the beginning of the book, and I just went through each time I saw the DEI logo, and what was that connected to. So that's kind of what got me to the conclusion that I'm at now.
Yeah.
Is when I went through it that way, do I see a connection? And if I'm if I'm a reader who's not paying much attention, would this bring me to a conclusion that I wasn't looking for otherwise?
Well, it was included on page 39, which is preserve open space. And I think we might have taken that out, but it was there.
Yeah, and we left off last time and started on 79, which is economic
Yeah,
development.
39 was taken, the
And I'm not-
logo was taken out.
Yeah, it was.
Sidebar stays with the logo is taken out because that doesn't work.
It didn't
Okay.
click, yeah.
But on
So it's on the
79
POCD approach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's like the first page is to tell you what it is, I believe, in the beginning. Is that what you're saying?
right, it's on page 27. So the logos are there, it tells you specific diversity, overarching principles of the POCD. We took it out of preserving open space because I think people thought it didn't fit. And then it's in economic development and the housing needs. But DEI, a large focus of their work is on the housing.
Yeah. Which is true, but is there more to it than that?
But for our purposes, yeah, there probably are, but is what that is it germane to the POCD, and it might not be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, just to
Yeah.
kind of
No, it's
see where everyone's thoughts are on this.
I'm actually fine leaving it in under the housing, and that it is there, that we're really looking at this whole thing through the lens of sustainability. I get what you're saying, but I also think it is such a push for DEI, and that, yes, are they doing, really a large focus is the affordable include.
I have no problem with page 85. If I ripped out page 85 and was just holding this, I have no problem with it.
Okay.
It's not the page itself. It's just the overarching theme that, like, I'm just trying to make sure I have we have a good grasp on what messaging we're getting across.
Yeah.
Looks like
Yeah,
Okay.
I hear what you're
You know,
saying.
I do, I don't know.
But I'm looking at page
If I can jump
79,
in
and
just
all
for
I'm
a
seeing
sec.
is economic
Yeah.
George
development.
went through the document, he thinks there's about 4 or 5 times or places that logo is used. I think Marcus brings up an excellent point. Let's go back. In the fervor of
That's
putting
what I
the
see,
draft
George.
plan together, I was trying to locate it in places that I thought made sense, but I didn't give it the thought or analysis that Marcus has. So what I'd like you to do now is go back, look at those 4 or 5 instances, make the connection in my mind, check the messaging to make sure that it reflects what we want to say, and then come back, with modifications as appropriate. So,
And I must say that the first 3
It's on the 20,
really only are in reference to an explainer. The
exactly.
first one says this is what it is, the second one says this, the third one says these items were identified at the workshop. So I think that might be to Marcus's point, which is
What have we said?
Right, then the other 2 were, yeah.
so let me take a look.
Yeah, and this whole thing started on page 79, and I'm looking at economic development. I'm not getting any messaging about affordable housing on this page. Are you?
No, so that's what I was saying last week is that if it's not about affordable housing, it's how can this make us money?
I
So-
have that circled though, so I get, yeah,
Because
to take a look at it, yeah.
because it kind of feels like, well, we have a DEI thing going on. How can we make a couple? In Simsbury, how does it affect us?
yeah, we didn't I think we didn't like that language either.
And it's not that I'm saying that's my personal thought on how it reads.
I wouldn't want
It's that if I
people to
think
read it
about
that way.
another person,
I don't want
who's
people to
reading
read it that way either.
This may be a
Right, it doesn't-
situation.
The idea is there, and I don't like it.
Logo was an overreach in that chapter, and so I think that we can either delete it or
Yep.
modify it or get rid of it or something else.
Marcus,
I think there are
what
some
areas
different-
might you like to see it applied that it isn't?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe like you were saying, we can add more, maybe another section to it. Because I know page 87, like that sidebar, I'd love to have more of a page of that because it's very long. So if we could add it there and then maybe expand to take it to another page. We have a workshop discussion on 87 and we kind of talk about how affordability is an issue, but it has that same thing
More
where
inclusive.
the pages, like the words are kind of, it says becoming, where it doesn't kind of fit the whole sidebar. So if we could make that more of a page and then kind of expand on the DEI there, because I wrote in my notes, I was like, why is this not its own page? Or it's, it could be more of a section to kind of fit what it is we're talking about now.
Well, the workshop, yeah, we usually put those in the sidebars.
Just
I don't
because
know,
so many
maybe
words.
taking the logos out, period.
I like the logo.
I think I've got a new lens on this, thanks to Marcus, so let me take a look through and see what I can
Fair enough.
accomplish.
Because we don't, yeah, I don't know.
How about pages 86 and 87?
Although, that to Marcus's point on 87,
Oh,
the first
87.
point we have, and the first bullet under the first point is that this is critical for us for overall diversity now and in the future. So it's kind of like
What page?
on 87.
She's in the sidebar.
And
Oh, in the
it's-
sidebar.
87,
Yeah, I don't mind the wordiness because part of reading this, part of the difficulty I always find in word underlining is it just all that red and underlining makes it harder to read than it will when you accept the changes. But that kind of ties to having the logo above that.
Right.
Yeah,
Would you feel that, and we move it from there to there, perhaps? Because that's the point. That's the number one point the first point they're making.
Yeah, and we could take that and make this more of a point. I don't know. I just think it's because we have so many words like become is run on the side, future, Simsbury, we don't need, it's kind of goes from one line to another.
Yeah, the line breaks are weird.
It's that's the reason why I said if it could go somewhere else. The line breaking makes
the line break is
it hard to
hard.
read. I couldn't think of the
Yeah,
word.
so for
Thank
some
you.
reason,
Yeah, I
sidebars, I'm looking
I got you. I know
justify,
exactly.
whereas the body, well, the body text is too. So that's what happens when it's just an inch and a half, and so it does,
Yeah.
it does break weird.
I think yeah, that is a solution, you know, because it is discussing DEI, and we could put the logo there.
Put the logo there.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to on page 85.
Yeah.
Because it's a broader discussion. All right.
And the whole page really is talking about how we include everyone.
Yeah.
The old, the young, the disabled.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on 86, 87?
Older residents may not want to move out.
Okay. How about 88, 89?
Just remember what we're trying to do here as we kind of go forward from 89. You know, Glenn made an attempt to really fully incorporate your affordable housing plan into this document. So that's what you're seeing. Certainly a good balance of the standalone plan is now in here. It's in these pages, the same
Right.
document you approved
Right.
of. Yeah.
Right.
Julie, I had a few points that she wanted me to bring up when she was gone.
Yeah.
And on 89, she wanted to know if there would be links to the percentages. So state criteria only count 5% of the housing units. If there was a link as to how that was calculated, or that
You link to the state website where we get the percentage from.
right, or
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Department of Housing maintains a website that annually has the listing. So in other words, I think it's a stable web address,
It is.
and I think we can do that. It's not, you're not gonna get
Yeah,
a 404
that,
error, so. Okay.
check that off.
Anything else on 90, 91?
Yes. So the one thing I wanted to, I was looking for, not only here, but way back when we first talked about it on page 18. And we'd pass that, and I thought, well, that's a good 18. We don't need to put more stuff when we're introducing housing. But when we talk about what affordable housing does Simsbury have, I think we would, I feel very strongly that we include a sentence about the NOAAs, because that is not well known. And we were long into an 830G, way at the end of an 830G application, before a number of us on the board said, wait a moment, every time we read the sales prices in town, they're less than this so-called affordable housing we're asked to approve right now. And then it came out during our affordable housing plan that in either 2019 or 2020, or maybe 21, 26% of all home sales in Simsbury were at the financial criteria to be considered affordable housing. And they weren't considered affordable housing because they weren't deed restricted, which is actually better for affordable housing, because deed restriction precludes intergenerational wealth accumulation. And that's a very large number, and most people don't know that. And
You're right.
and those are by the state's 830G definition of 90% of the median income.
Somebody's done a number of these plans. I'm looking at the bottom of page 90, and I'm surprised that 26% of the housing units in Simsbury would have sold for below those numbers.
Yes.
3-bedroom house for 243.
I don't know, the bedroom,
It's as high as 24%, I guess.
we were looking at, we were
279.
shocked to find out that when we were looking at Hendrick's Cottage, that affordable housing at that time was 279, 275. This was several years ago. And those of us who read the paper every week looking at the sales prices of houses notice that, wow, a whole lot of homes sold at that price or below.
Really important to know the bedroom counts, though. right?
But
That's critical to
this bedroom count is, in the 830G, I didn't see a bedroom count associated. I saw a price associated.
So
That people
that's-
at 90% of the,
You can't judge this book by that cover. It really does involve some more analysis, but I think what I might suggest here, what I'd like to do is perhaps find a way to get a discussion about naturally occurring, but not on these two pages. I think
well,
these
you
two
know,
pages-
see, what affordable housing does Simsbury have? We have that. It's not with the Scarlet A that 830G asks for, where it's something people would prefer not to have a deed restricted home instead of a deed restricted home.
Absolutely.
I think, and it's something, you know, there is this concept that this is just a rich person's town. But 26% of the housing to be sold at that could be affordable by people at 90% of the median income or below, and quite below, and I know people at a lot below who have moved into affordable housing. In fact, I just helped someone do this at the 1st of May. Move from one very affordable place to another affordable place that was much nicer.
So Holly, can I ask a question? Since this is a, what is like a consultation document, right? It's a,
Policy document.
policy document, right?
So, yeah.
What would putting, and I'm asking this question and not, just kind of devil's advocate, what would putting that in here do that would help us make decisions on future projects?
Well, and that will come up in our recommendations later. If 26% of our housing already meets the 90% of median income requirements, then perhaps our focus on inclusionary housing zoning issues should be focusing at the 60 and 30% level, because we have quite a bit at the 90% level. And where we're missing, where we're really low, is at the 60 and the 30%.
Except what you're wanting to put in doesn't get us toward that affordable housing, because according to the 830G law. So what really has to happen is it has to change.
Well, the
at
law
state
needs
level.
to change. It's
right,
flawed.
but that's not what this document is for. I'm just
All right,
trying
but
to.
but
you know
this
what I mean? I'm
document
just trying to
is
get-
informing
so
the
how-
citizens. It's
Holly's talking about almost a three-dimensional chart.
Yes.
We were able to get into the assessor's database and figure out, not sale price, but some units haven't sold in years or whatever. But let's say we were actually able to get the house value and map how many three-bedroom houses sell above and below a certain price, and we could.
exactly, yeah.
It's a graph, and for each of these different bedroom configurations, we could get a handle on what that number is.
Because there's a terrible misconception that we don't have affordable
what's
The other
housing.
misconception here is that the units aren't deed restricted, then they may not be affordable in the future for the people who need them. So from a public
Right.
policy perspective, you can be defensive and say, we've already got units that, and again, I'm surprised at 26%. I'm sort of ready to ask you to give me the numbers or show me what.
Oh, and that was something I was following every single
I
week for
understand,
the
but
last
if
several
we're
years.
going to put it in here, we're going to need numbers for it.
I think Cheryl Cook has she knew all about this and she's at the Simsbury Housing Authority, and it shouldn't be this well-kept secret.
No, it shouldn't be, but the issue is, from a public policy
Yeah.
perspective, the issue is the housing for the future.
And this came up at meetings here. Mike Glidden had those numbers. I don't know what happened to that information, but that had been compiled independent of the group here.
I'm just nervous putting it in. That's just I get what Holly
But
is saying, but this
we put
is
in so many facts and figures. Why not this?
because I think it's more. Go ahead.
First of all, I need the facts and figures. I don't have them, and I'd be surprised if the number's that high. But, so if we can figure out where that comes from.
And that was sales price.
I
That was
understand.
sales.
But I think the idea is, I think it makes sense.
And that was the percent of houses that sold that year.
Let me
Yeah.
finish up here. On page 89, I think it makes sense to add in a discussion of the concept of naturally occurring
Yes.
affordable housing. I
like
think
that.
to explain why it doesn't
Okay.
count to the state database, which is an important consideration for us, may not be affordable in the future. But there are housing units in town which are naturally affordable. They go on the realtor's list as fixer-upper.
Yeah.
Right? And somebody goes and puts the money into them and sells them and makes money.
Well,
And it's not always the people who are.
that's not fair.
qualified.
Most of those were not fixer-uppers. Those were market rate houses that sold
They
at
may not
market
be
rates.
restricted, so they may not be there in the future. That's the state's methodology.
Okay, all right, let me talk logically. Let's talk it to its logical conclusion.
Logically-
Let's say you have
Holly,
10%.
I want the data.
Okay.
Get me the data, and we'll go from there.
I don't have
So
it
Holly,
here.
would you be, because I'm nervous too about number, and I just.
Yeah, and I agree, we need data. We need
If
data.
you-
But
if we think we have Cheryl, ask Cheryl if she's got the information, and then I'm happy to take a look at it, because I think the concept of NOAA.
Are we allowed to ask Mike where he got those numbers? Because he had those numbers, and we had discussed them, but
I don't remember that he had numbers. I know that you were looking in the real estate section and.
yeah, but those were not the numbers of all it wasn't the assessor's database. That was it was from, I think, the realtors or some realtor board in town that had said that was the sales price that was the percent of all the homes that sold, 26% of them that had sold had met that.
Yeah, that might be different now, because that
We'll review the
wasn't.
data that we have.
Yeah.
available.
Well, actually, it would be, yeah.
So would you be happy though with, if we put something in about NOAA? Because I think
Well, I
it's
would
worth
like,
mentioning.
yes, with
And
facts, yeah.
But if we can't verify the facts, would it suffice to put something in about naturally occurring?
Not if we don't, I'd like to quantify it, because there is a tremendous misconception in the town, tremendous, across the board. And to Glenn's point, if we only had 10% NOAAs,
Yeah.
then needing deed restriction would make sense. Because if you lose a few, then you're under 10%.
Right.
But if you have 26% NOAA and your goal is 10, then why do you need the deed restriction? You're not going to lose them all. The
Right, but
market-
again, that goes back to the state law, not for this POCD. We can't solve that issue in the POCD.
Well, I'm talking about how we proceed, and again, as a matter of policy,
But
the
I
next
like the
time there's an
idea of adding-
830G, and we mentioned this the last time we had that hearing, the judge had said that we hadn't shown that there wasn't a need. Well, there wasn't a need at that level. It was targeting the 90%, but the 90% there wasn't a shortage of. And, there's a shortage of 60 and 30% of
I agree
median,
with that. Those are
but
the
not a
hardest
shortage at the
levels.
90%.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that.
And what we're doing, and when we were in the middle of it,
Holly?
doing it, okay.
I'm going to take a shot at putting a
Okay.
sidebar in here, but without real data.
Okay, I'll see if I can talk to Cheryl on that.
Come up with
Okay.
anything for this, so let me take a shot at it. So mark your book, page 89 is reference.
But that's a big action item I got to work on is,
The reason I picked page 89 is because
Yeah.
90 and 91 are really the pages that talk about the state affordable housing number that applies in 830G in the Affordable Housing Appeals List.
Right.
And I don't want to muddy that discussion, so I'm going to put it on the
I
page
agree.
before that leads into it, and then get it talked about there. Is the bottom of page 91. I have this box here that says, what affordable housing could Simsbury have had? In other words, we don't have an inclusionary zoning requirement today that says, even tonight in the conversation, 10% of those units will be affordable,
why don't we?
because the zoning commission hasn't adopted it.
They don't want to?
I don't know. But is this, I don't want this box to be seen as critical, like we're criticizing the zoning
Right.
commission. Are you okay with this box, or should I delete it or leave it in? We could have had,
Well, we should leave it in for the
I-
same reason we should put the NOAAs in, because it's time to get our policy to make sense.
Yeah, I would leave it in. I
And
didn't.
that's the same reason we got to get the NOAAs, because it's time to pressure our senators and representatives to make the law make sense.
All right, I just want, because
Yeah.
be respectful of time too. Okay.
about pages 92, 93.
The second bullet down has at prices twice.
Good for you. Thank you.
You always catch us.
Oh, and so that next paragraph, so our affordable housing is now at 5.08. I know it was at 4.66, but 50, that's the,
The 22
Jakian was
number.
big, Willow Arms, although there's some, I think that I looked at the database, I'm not sure the Willow Arms isn't counted twice.
I mean, that's their official list, so.
It is, but I think that's maybe counted twice for funky reasons, so the funky
So
reasons.
I wouldn't, that's the accurate number from the State
DOH.
Housing Authority.
508,
Deals with-
5.08.
That's their.
Okay, perfect.
That's the number.
Okay.
The number is not accurate because we haven't, that's using 2010
Yeah, there's two.
unit numbers. Because we don't have, the Census Bureau hasn't produced the new unit count, which we know is going to increase by at least 15%, 1,500 units. So that number is going to go back down into the fours,
Okay,
almost certainly.
okay.
What he said.
What he said, okay.
Do you
Yeah,
have,
well, I mean, data is data, right?
do you have a number, and I apologize if it's in here and I missed it, on how many homes are deed restricted in Simsbury?
We do. Not many, 35.
35
Correct.
townwide.
I think that's our number, 35, 38, 33.
Well, it's not,
I
it's
think
a hard
we
sell.
have
People
commitment
don't
on
want to buy
42
deed
total, I
restricted
think.
properties. You can't guarantee intergenerational wealth with deed
Right.
restriction.
Right.
I mean, I would never advise anyone to buy
buy a
a
deed
deed
restricted
yeah.
house.
Would you tell your children to do
No,
that?
because
No.
that's what you don't.
No, only.
So this is why that plan
Well,
needs to be
only if it's a
fixed.
starter home or, you know, you gotta start somewhere.
Right.
And if we've got more of a crisis with
No, I don't.
generational housing, where we've got a whole generation
Because I had the
You have it
that
because I
buy
sent
that-
it to you?
that can't afford a home.
Yeah, no, I,
So do you start with a deed restricted and then
And the-
graduate into something, you know?
well, see, deed
I
restriction
need
doesn't
this
make
for
it
the-
easier for the developers.
That's why, for example.
It doesn't. So the biggest thing that we have the problem with is what the gentleman was saying today. He goes, look, I can tell them that we want affordable, but if the numbers won't work, they ain't gonna do it.
I like that idea.
Well, that's why we need that inclusionary zoning to say, it don't matter, you build here, you gotta do it.
Yeah, I went to the deal last weekend.
Anything else in 92,
We'll
93?
we'll provide a better detail on a breakdown of those deed restricted units.
Yeah, actually, there it is, right here, page 93. Second bullet, 28 units are deed restricted.
There you go. Oh, where is it at price? There it is.
28 are deed restricted with a
Deed restricted house or
a project
paying rent
commitment
in
of
an
35
apartment
total.
until you're 40 years old?
Okay.
Okay.
Unbuilt
It's not a
and
choice.
planned, pipeline.
It's not a
So they
choice.
only get counted once the CO is issued, the
If
deed
you
restriction
keep
is in
non-deed
place.
restricted,
So
you can still do
if
it.
it's under construction, you don't count
The
it.
question
Okay.
is, can they afford,
All right.
can the developers
So
afford to
90,
do
are
it?
we up to 94?
94, 95?
Okay, I just wanted to mention on 93, I'd written that Noah's could have gone there too. I mean, we're kind of getting, yeah, okay, just throwing it out.
Just don't want to do
Okay,
Noah's.
so on 94, I want to represent Julie one more time.
Okay.
She questioned the fact that some of those bullets, E, F, G, H, and I, had bolding at the beginning, but the other policies didn't. And
Yep.
if we wanted it to be more consistent or not.
Yep. So I think I'm going to delete the bold rather than try to add bold to every other policy in the document.
Okay. And I wanted to add an L.
What you got?
And I again, because I thought we'd get the Noahs in, I didn't, I don't have this worded very well, but to review the state of affordable housing or basically in order to, we should be looking at ways to target the 30 and 60% of median income for affordable housing. Insofar as we have quite a number, we have sufficient inventory for the 90% of median income. That's what I wanted to add, something to that effect.
So might I suggest that if we wanted to say something like that on page 94, I would encourage the commission to think about modifying A.
That's exactly what I was just going to suggest.
Okay, all right, I agree,
That
I
makes
concur.
sense.
And so we should say to focus on the 30 and 60% of median
Correct.
housing needs.
That's
Okay.
when,
All right.
as you were
Thank you.
talking, I said add it to A.
Okay,
You can be
good.
more
All right.
specific.
So I think my suggested wording would be to say something like, comma, including those at 60% AMI and below. So the general
Yeah, and
categories
below.
they use are 80, 60, 50, 30. Don't ask me why. Okay, don't know. But
I thought it was 30, 60, 90.
no, 90 is not.
Okay, sorry.
I know,
80, 60, 50, and 30. Those are basically the HUD programs. And so I think everybody starts skimming at the 80%. Those are the highest priced affordable units. And there is a need, but there's a more challenging need at 60, 50, and 30.
There is quite a bit of inventory at the 80%. We'll find those numbers.
On B, after expansion, I think it should be of. Right? Oh, or is it, wait, help them.
Where are you? Yeah, I agree with you. Good for you.
And then down in D,
Can I
Oh.
hire you? For
yes, you can.
And then you had another one, I think?
On D,
Yeah.
the second line, especially if.
Yeah. Oh, good for, oh my God. First of all, I'm gonna hang up my keyboard. I'm done. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I would like to draw your attention to the map on page 95. This map, I think, would probably be the most, this and the open space maps are likely to be the most commented maps in the POCD going forward. I think this map here identifies these blue shapes, and they are noted as possible housing opportunity areas. And these areas are sort of the places in Simsbury best served by transit, commuter buses, et cetera. They're near employment sources. They're near places you can buy food. They are accessible. They're areas where higher density, even our discussion tonight about the PAD, these are areas which might have the most potential. So if somebody was to propose an affordable housing development in areas outside of the blue, under 830G, you would say, well, it's not in a blue circle. It's not going to carry a lot of weight. We're going to try to encourage either regulations or approaches to produce meaningful affordable housing in appropriate locations. These blue circles were meant to sort of identify these areas have more potential than others. You'll notice, for example, even with the recent application that came in, it's in a blue circled area. You say, okay, well, that's not a bad location in Simsbury overall. It's better than the side of, Talcott Mountain and all of the other stuff. There were elements of that, either density, parking, design, et cetera, which were challenges, but the location wasn't bad. So this blue map, you could have somebody before you or before the zoning commission waving this map. Our site is in, so therefore you have to. And it's not that you have to, but these are the locations which are better than locations outside of the blue circle. So since it's our map, your map, or the POCD, just wanted to highlight the blue areas and say, are you comfortable with this going forward? The only one that I think gives me a little bit of pause is West Simsbury Center.
Yeah, that was, I had to ask
There's
you
no
about
water and
that.
sewer out there, so having density there, you can make a cute little village with septic, right? But if somebody's gonna throw in affordable housing units at, what'd you say, how many, 16 units per acre?
But it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work there.
Right.
So,
But the reason there's a circle around it is that is the Western Village Center. It is, and so that doesn't mean they have.
they'd have to
It
fit it
could be
in.
an alternative product that just perhaps the lot sizes are just a little bit smaller and can accommodate.
Could be a village.
Well,
There's
so I don't know.
villages all over the place on well and septic. So are you okay with that blue circle or?
I just want to throw this out there. There's that nice little, from the PA 490 map, there's a sizable hunk of land off of Latimer Lane.
Yep.
which is nice and high density for walking to school, maybe not for shopping, but it's not too far. But I've heard people say, oh, well, we're not going to look at that because there's wetlands or something, but it's a sizable
It's
piece
wet.
of property.
There's some wet on it, for sure.
Is it totally
It's not totally, but there's a lot of wet. And that's probably the likelihood it hadn't been developed.
Okay, 'cause it is-
It has zoning on it.
It is sizable, and that would be,
It's about 30 acres.
Yeah, so in putting together this map, we weren't focusing quite so much on size. We were talking,
Okay.
thinking about the
well, I mean,
locations of it.
I was thinking I'm thinking geographically, walking distance to a school is, for affordable housing would be desirable. I think that
Yeah, I mean, it seems very, I don't know what the current Board of Ed policy is. Even if you're in walking distance, they don't let you walk anymore. In many towns, they bus you.
It depends on the sidewalks and, you
Yeah.
know, safety of the kids. And you got to think of in the winter when there's snow banks.
I think there's sidewalks
there's a
on
lot of
Latimer Lane.
consideration.
I know Latimer is walking. I just had kindergarten orientation there. So at least Latimer anyway. I can't
Yeah,
speak.
and this is right off of Latimer. I'm a big believer in livability, and
I am too.
and having a child walk to school to me is a big hunk of livability. And I just if you're going to put a little bar around a place that doesn't have water and sewer, well, that doesn't either, I suppose. Or yes, it does. It just seems like if we're going to have it in West Simsbury, that would also be an option.
Yeah, so I think the reason that West Simsbury was highlighted this way is because our sense of place map identifies it as a node in the village.
Right.
Yeah, it's
This
cute.
is just a parcel of land, and so we were trying to get assemblages that would strengthen the ambiance and sense of place in town, so to try to meet all of those. So I'll do whatever the commission wishes. I think
I think it's too
You
particular.
remember, this map is also not just
Just-
for affordable housing.
exactly.
It's where do we want to direct?
Correct.
Yeah.
develop-
And I do agree
and
with the
develop it
principle
with a
that we
little
should
bit of
direct it
density.
to the high density.
Yes.
That's really what
And if it's.
And it makes the whole town
Doesn't mean these other parcels can't be developed for residential uses.
What are your thoughts on the southwest corner here? I mean, that's 202 and 44. There's,
Yeah, the nature, I think,
there,
and I'll,
is there any viability to put housing in
you know,
there?
the nature of retail is funny these days. We've had some real changeover in those inline kind of larger tenant spaces. Could they could some of those properties use a little opportunity for a mix? Not today, but tomorrow or the next day, maybe.
And as part of it, could have been the 2007 POCD, there was quite a big discussion about the properties across Bushy Hill Road from the Commons, which is the single-family homes on the island and everything else, and what a tremendous opportunity that area was in terms of location,
Yeah.
whether it was for retail or office or other things that were going gangbusters at the time. But they were tied up because of the ownership pattern. But it is an area which is well located, well situated, and so if the area on the other side of Bushy Hill across from the Commons was to get assembled and redeveloped, that could be a place for housing. It meets the locational attributes, was sort of the idea.
I didn't realize there was enough space there that it's not committed already.
We looked, as part of the 2007 POCD, we looked at that area and all the parcels and realized that, holy cow, much of our economic development goals could be met just in that one area.
Is that labeled correctly? I see 44 up on one side and 202. I think
It is 202. It's also, it's both. So what's missing there is 167. It should be 167 coming in. It's 202 splits when you get out in Canton.
That's right, I'm 44. Yeah.
Right.
oh, it's both 202 and 44.
44, yes.
But it looks like 44 is the one that crawls up the side.
Right.
Yeah, so the road just cuts right through there, that corner of Simsbury. Anything on 96?
Again, I'm being awfully picky, but where it says Canton and above the N, it says 44. I don't think 44 is there, right? I think 44 is down where 202 is.
It goes through both.
Yeah, it goes through both. It's in the right spot.
It is in the right spot.
It's grayed out here. You might see it better on a different map where it doesn't have gray on top of it, but
it continues. So it's on 44. If you see that light gray line, that is 44 as you extend out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
But
mobile,
wait, but
the mobile
44
station.
is this line, not this line, right?
It's this line. It's the.
So that's 44 is the red line. This is Bushy Hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the funny thing is on a paper map, so you feel like you got your.
Right.
I couldn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could we make that redder or call that out? It looked like one side of the triangle was 202 and the other side was 44. I didn't see that road cutting through that.
I think if you, and this is the
Which
thing,
is both.
online, you could zoom in on it
Yeah.
and say it would.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Anything on 96? Much of this falls to the zoning commission, so again, we're in a sensitive place there with election changes, et cetera. Then the other thing is the graphic on the bottom left on page 96. The red outlined property is the housing authority. We have Virginia Conley in the back and Owen Murphy in the front. They have been investigating the possibility of redeveloping the Owen Murphy apartments, which is what's shown here in the picture on the right-hand side of the page. This was the model back in the 60s and 70s. There were one-story little cottages, and realistically, if you want to go visit your neighbor in the middle of a snowstorm as an elderly person, or you put your life at risk. So the model nowadays is consolidated buildings and units, much like Virginia Conley, and it's much more efficient. You can wear your bunny slippers to play Monopoly in the meeting room, et cetera.
It's not just elderly there.
No, I understand, but it's an inefficient configuration. So my thought process was the hardest thing for us to find sometimes for affordable housing is the land. And the housing authority has access to money, which is many other people don't have access to. There's a lot of competition, but they can be effective. And there might be the opportunity to expand by acquiring parcels nearby, such as getting a right of first refusal on the Shepherd of the Good Hills or something, whatever the name of the church is. It's just such a great location, and the food pantry is already there, et cetera. So just longer term, I thought it could be helpful to have a picture in the plan that allows somebody to say, since 2023, we've thought that this might be an opportunity. It may not happen for 20 or 30 years, but it might be helpful. Anything else on 96?
Just as a side, I remember Cheryl saying something that it's been frustrating to get the resources to do the kind of expansion that they've envisioned. Is that something that we can solve?
You can. It involves, so if we had an affordable housing trust fund or an affordable housing fund, money could be in there, and other communities have used that money to help the housing authority get into the investment and get more shovel ready, and then the funding from HUD comes through and pays back the money. So it's sort of fronting the money. The Board of Selectmen could front the money. But a housing authority is a non-municipal entity. It's called the Simsbury Housing Authority, but it's not affiliated with the town. State statutes require the town to adopt an ordinance to establish, but once it's established, it's an independent entity. And so the Board of Selectmen would have to agree to give money to a nonprofit to fund this, and that becomes a delicate issue in terms of, giving our money to a non-municipal entity.
And yet they've done such a good job.
They have, but.
I mean, that's real affordable.
I agree.
When you're down and out,
I got you.
we have some
The waiting
place.
list is ridiculously long, but.
I just want to be cognizant of time, so we have about 20 minutes, because I know we're going to try to end at 9. We haven't gotten through 20 pages. We have one more meeting, and we'd have to get through. So if we can kind of zip through.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I think there's not a lot of changes in sustainability and resiliency. Again, we are blessed, I think, in Simsbury to have entities that are very involved and motivated on this. I didn't realize that one of the graphics I used came through so poorly on 99, so I'll get that updated. But any comments on anything from 97 through 102?
And 102, I'm the liaison to the Sustainability Committee, and they went through the last POCD, the 2017, and suggested some changes. I mean, some action items that we do cover, but wanted to see that explicitly. And so I'm now going to my email to go find it. I was ready for this 2 weeks ago, so it's going to take me a while to.
Can I,
So
while you're,
hold that thought. So here's my.
I think you have those.
What?
Did you get a copy? Or I don't know if you were copied on those. When the, I have to go find, it's going to be a,
So Holly,
Yeah.
send me the email, all right?
okay.
Because then
Yeah.
I'll go
Because it
through.
really isn't changing too much.
Mark
Did
was
you-
kept firing stuff at me, and I
Okay.
finally told him to slow down because, they've done so much work. This is a 30,000-foot,
right.
Right.
so.
But this was, they just had a few little action items that they wanted to, and I'll send that to you. Okay.
If you
I
would,
would,
I'll send that. Okay.
we're way down the road. By the
Okay.
time we adopt a policy, they're going to be 2 steps beyond us. They're
Right.
that active.
Well,
So
this
good
is
for
just
us.
some, calling out food waste and composting specifically.
I just would add that, one of the things that, in conservation we work on, and there are other entities in town like the pollinator pathway and that I get there's a lot of, electric grid and all that type of thing, solar, but we do mention in here climate change, and I think it's important to highlight that, sustainability is also, this is down in the nitty gritty, so it's a much closer view. Removal of invasives, planting of native pollinating plants, sustainable landscaping practices so that new developments aren't just randomly spraying pesticides and things of that nature that I think could be highlighted in here that do add to climate change and other environmental issues that would make the place less sustainable. So you could have every building with solar and we're all green and we're using geothermal and all that, but then our landscaping practices and planting plans and all of that are actually working against, what we're trying to do here.
So I struggled where to put that because there's so many things that it could have gone into the sustainability chapter.
Right.
So the decision I made,
Right.
and maybe what we need to do is refer from here back to the natural resources
Right.
chapter as I put it
Yeah,
there.
right,
And so the issue is, hey,
right.
some people will say, well, sustainability, open space is part of sustainability too. So
Yeah.
in other words, you get cross references everywhere.
Yeah.
So Marjorie was all over me about, well, every time the word plant showed up,
Yeah, I know.
so
I'm-
I tried to,
Amusing.
Yeah.
so maybe I'll just.
All out, that sends it back.
Then you use the term social sustainability. Is that anything other than overall, all these concepts combined?
Kind of. I think the issue is for us as a community, here we are, you see people walking down Hot Meadow Street, everybody's doing this, right? We don't talk to each other anymore, we text people. So what is social sustainability in a community? It's sort of us being communal. And so the concept was meant to say it's not just ecological sustainability, it's not just economic sustainability, but it's the whole fabric that holds Simsbury together.
A behavioral thing.
Kind of like, but without admonishing our residents that we're not doing a good job on this. So it's,
So just to wrap up where I started, because then we went into social. So is there a way to? Yeah. No worries. So I'm just going to wrap it up. So is there a way maybe to reference back to that so people understand that, that's such a big part of it?
yeah, no,
Because honestly, without but so I appreciate that, and I'm sorry, Don. I didn't mean to sort of step on you like that. So
I'm looking at the
Thank
bottom
you.
of page 100 to put a big box
Yep.
to basically
Perfect.
call
Thank you.
out all of the things like pollinator pathways. And
thank you. I appreciate it because I think it's an important part of it.
Madam
So
Chair, so
appreciate it.
So
103 is a hefty chapter, so I don't know if we
You
can
wanna
do
end?
it, or you want to.
we can end. Yeah, I had something on 102. Yeah, I see what you're saying, not, oh. I mean,
What did you have on 102?
there was something about, earlier it said something about meadow mowing on page 34. And then this said, develop no-mow areas on all town property. But then on 34H, implement meadow mowing.
Yeah,
Yeah, the-
Joe's probably best to answer this. I mean, there's two different concepts.
Right.
Okay,
How do you, there's different ways to cut meadows, one for birds, one for beet.
Right.
I mean, there's
Well,
a
I think that
different
open space has created policy, mowing policies now for all of the open space fields. And for example, we're looking at like the Barn Doors Triangle,
Yeah.
Simsbury Pollinator Pathway, to develop that into a bird sanctuary. That's going to be managed different than, say, the field that's directly across Firetown, which will be a pollinator field. So open space has already gone through and picked these fields and designated them as types of fields and how they should be maintained. It's really a larger concept than mowing.
oh, so the meadow mowing, okay.
So meadow mowing, I don't know if we need to call it, what I just said. It's getting late, so I'm stumbling around.
Yeah, it just says implement the native plan, meadow mowing, and other policies.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think that this is a situation, I think I'm going to take the text from 34 and blend it in here, because the meadow mowing policy includes no mow in addition to the other mows.
Gotcha.
Right.
The other ways to
Okay.
mow, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a more global philosophy, and they've
Right.
already adopted the policies, and
Right.
page
Right.
102 doesn't sort of reference that. So I
Right.
think the right thing to do is bring 34 to here,
Right.
and then I think we're
Okay.
good to go.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you a question, George and Glenn. We'd have about 25 pages to go through next Tuesday. I mean, we really I'd like to see this part wrapped up next Tuesday if possible.
I very much would too. I mean, I think
we're close.
And actually, George, it's a special meeting.
So we haven't, I mean, we always held that out as the old playoff series term, if necessary.
yeah.
Right.
So.
Is there gonna be
So it would be a special meeting, and you just need to decide, did you want to meet a little bit earlier?
I
And you
think-
meet a little bit
I
earlier?
cannot.
You can't, so
7
7,
o'clock.
it would have to be
7
7.
o'clock.
Oh, we have to do 7 next week.
So
Okay.
just as the good news, realistically, we have to get through page 129.
Right.
Because page 130 on is the glossary, which really hasn't changed.
Right,
Right. Right.
Principles. Yes, we got to do the PA 490 too. So I think,
And that would be our only business next week, so we should be
Yeah,
able
should be
to.
able to do it.
I mean, we did 23, 4, okay.
I don't believe that there's anything in here which is majorly controversial. I just.
Oh, we'll find something, Glenn, don't worry. No worries on that, Glenn.
Oh, we're messing with community facilities, so I just want to make sure that we don't rush through that. We have
Okay, Yeah,
7 o'clock next Tuesday, we're
Input from
good
the
to go.
7 o'clock, oh, so you can't do, so 7 o'clock.
I'll get it to him.
Oh,
Rich, we got 10 minutes. No, I feel like the two chipmunks. After you. No, I insist. You go.
Oh, you want to use the 10 minutes and talk
Yeah, I
about
think we
PA
can. Do
490?
you want me to start?
yeah, okay.
Okay, so.
All right, so we'll
To
start.
explain to you what PA 490 is before, the text that we're dealing with here is back on page 52 and 53.
Put it away.
So PA 490 is this concept of the state adopted a taxation program back in the 1960s. Suburbanization was happening and growth was causing taxes to go up to build new schools and all of the other stuff. And so that was causing people to sell their land, which was causing new growth, which was causing taxes to go up. The state adopted a policy of tax assessment reduction for certain types of lands. There are 4 categories in the state, what we call farm assessment, and that is you are farming for farm income. Forest assessment, which is you have at least 25 acres of land with a tree management plan, and so, boom, you're good to go. Maritime heritage land, apply to us. And the last one is probably
We used to be an
the worst
ocean.
program. It's called the open space assessment policy.
Mm.
But it's really not, and I wish we didn't use the words open space. So George and I have started to use the phraseology, local option. We as a municipality can decide if we want to give tax breaks to certain properties. And so, for example, the state threshold is 25 acres of forest, which means if I have 24, Erin, my neighbor, gets it because she has 25, but I do not, I get shut out. So locally, we can decide on an approach. Now, Simsbury adopted it well, can't say adopted. Simsbury was using the program at one time, but it's been lost to history. We don't know how it was established, whether it was approved or whatever. The statutes say if a town is going to have this, it has to be recommended in the POCD, that's where you guys come in, and then it has to be adopted by town meeting. Earlier on in this process, we looked at the database, we found 9 properties in town that were receiving the open space assessment. The assessor went through and was able to put basically those properties into other categories, where it wasn't relevant anymore. So we are now a situation of a municipality which has farm and forest, but not the local option.
Can I talk a little about the intent of local option as it relates to development? And I think we've said this before too, which is, the intent of that local option under the statute talks about delaying or discouraging or
Making undeveloped land less expensive to own.
right. So
If I have a 10-acre parcel of land and the taxes get to the point, it's like, you know what? Throw up your hands and say, I'm just gonna sell it into development and we can get houses.
because perhaps there's something valuable also about that
So
particular.
Simsbury was on an S-shaped growth curve. We were doing something at the time we were that. We're not. We're a more mature community right now. We're flattening out most of the parcels. I mean, for example, many towns use things like Hot Meadow Country Club. Is it a farm? Not really. Is it a forest? Not really. But they would say, okay. They would designate particular properties and they would say, okay, you know what? We would like to see Hot Meadow Country Club stay. We don't want to see it get developed or whatever. So yes, they benefit our community so they can have this tax break. So the question that George and I went through was that since we're not using that program today, it's a time for us to refresh or reassess where we're at. Does it make sense for us to establish a program that now makes sense going forward? So we created a map of Simsbury. This is, the analysis that we did is based on residentially zoned properties, because you generally don't give tax breaks to commercial industrial. Parcels which are more than 2 times the minimum lot size. In other words, if you only have the minimum lot size, you're not getting a tax break. It's if you have 2 lots or bigger, then you could subdivide or develop. So any parcel that's more than 2 times the minimum lot size for the zone, it shows up here as a red outline, okay? But then we said, look, you get this parcel on Latimer Lane, it's all wetlands, right? So
All wetlands. I thought we didn't know.
Mostly.
Little maneuver. And so the question is, how much land is
It's
actually
not gonna let me
developed?
develop that, are they?
Analysis, and that's not what the color codes are. And the color codes are, these are parcels which are more than 2 times the minimum lot size and have more than 2 times the minimum lot size we think of developable land, okay? And then George and I said, does it make sense for us to be given tax breaks to these parcels? Why might we? And so at the last meeting I mentioned, I think it was you had said, was it Hop Hollow or Hop Brook?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a bunch of parcels in here that are oversized because it's a private road and they were like
Right.
any estates, et cetera. Gophershire, some of the other lots up on the mountain. So likely to get
Steep slopes,
subdivided.
hard to develop here, steep slopes,
Yeah.
in larger pieces.
Where is that?
At the Walker.
Okay,
That's
solar
protected,
farm, State
It's not the
land.
woods, it's the schools.
Oh, at the Walker School,
Walker
okay,
School.
not the woods,
Right.
okay.
So I think the conclusion that George and I came through is that we just didn't think there was a really logical reason or purpose for giving tax breaks to these. had we been in a situation in Simsbury 20, 30, 40 years ago, where
Right.
much of this land was undeveloped and headed, we might have been able to manage growth at that time. But we're in a different situation today. Many of these parcels are environmentally constrained. There's really not much development potential. We're in a situation that actually housing development might actually help us meet some of our POCD goals here overall. And so that we're thinking that the POCD should mention, summarize what I've just stated to you, say that this provision exists in state law, and sometime in the next 10 years, should the town decide they would like to implement a local option program, the planning commission would support that analysis, which would mean that the plan would be amended at that time to reflect this, and it would have to be adopted by the Board of Selectmen. So the end result, I would say, of all of this analysis, is that there's no clear policy direction that we think meets a major public policy goal. Is that fair, Rich?
Yeah, I think part of it is that, with what the assessor had found with those 9 or so properties that we had talked about, they were able to be accommodated. I think 8 of the 9 were able to be accommodated in the forest, or
Okay.
as part of that, or her ability to just assess based on conditions.
What about the 9th one?
Nice one. The 9th one, I think, was a residential subdivided lot that for some reason was getting a reduced assessment that under rational analysis would not suggest there'd be any reason for a reduced assessment.
So that homeowner is going to get a new bill.
Well, they already have.
Oh.
They've already gotten that new bill.
Okay.
Back in October.
And the assessor worked with all the property owners involved.
Yeah.
This wasn't
Right,
something like a surprise in the mail.
Letters, right. You guys did a lot of work, yeah.
They called it the carpet even. And the assessment differentiations here are not huge. In other words, a residential lot, I'm just gonna say, let's say the assessed market value is like $100,000 for the lot, okay? Or maybe it's less in an R15 zone or whatever. If you have land in excess of the minimum lot size, it's called excess land. And that is assessed at like $3,000 an acre, okay? So then you take the mill rate on that, so it's not that expensive. PA 490 gets it down to $300 an acre, so it's about 10%. So, see what I'm saying? I mean, realistically, we're kind of at the fine margins here that, unless you had a very large parcel of land, the actual benefits, you'd probably notice them with your tax bill, but you wouldn't really.
Right.
So we went through all the data and the math, and I think the conclusion simply was that literally none of the parcels really jumped out at us.
Jumped out at us, yeah.
Really, this parcel deserves.
If the assessor had not found a way for Hop Meadow Country Club, I think we would be here before you saying that it's parcels like that. Otherwise, it's gonna get subdivided into house sites or whatever. And that realistically, it's.
And I think, depending on your kind of final call on this, it probably will make sense for us to go back to the Open Space Commission, to Francine, the assessor, and just remind them of what your conclusions were about. We don't see the great current need to continue to endorse that program at this time.
So I think in any conversations you may have with people on this, if you don't call it the open space assessment program, because people start to flip out, right? If you call it the local option program, then we see no local rationale or benefit for this, I think. So we'll summarize that on pages, what did I say?
52.
And the map on 53 is now going to be 2 color codes on here, which is simply that these are the parcels receiving the farm assessment, these are the parcels receiving the open space assessment. I got a note from the GIS guy, I think, he's got the colors reversed.
So my wetlands on Alf Latimer is a farm?
No, it's actually a forest.
Just a forest, yeah.
So I just said that, the
Colors were.
I think that
GIS consultant called me and said.
Oh, that's what you were saying. I apologize.
Is
Okay.
multiple going away or is that staying?
You can have parcels that have, it's mostly a farm, but part of the land is in a forest, it's called woodland, so the assessor categorizes that as.
Multiple.
If you use both programs.
Thank you for your work on that,
No,
Glenn and,
thanks.
George. That's really,
GMS guy.
yeah. No, it's really, really helpful. And I'm glad because that was one of my goals in doing, is really cleaning that up and just making sure that we're doing what we need to do. So, thank you. All
So
right.
I think the only other thing, longer term, is that I'm in the process of making edits to the document to bring us where we're at. Everything in here that's red line is going to go to black line.
Mm-hmm.
And only the changes that we have talked about will show up as red line.
Right.
And then, at that point in time, I think if the commission's ready for us to think about a public informational meeting sometime, I think, before the 4th of July. Because that would keep us on track to use the summer to make any final tweaks or changes and still go ahead in the fall. Or have a public meeting in July and August when people generally get irritated that we've done that. 'Cause we just happened to pick the week that they were on vacation.
Yeah.
And we'll talk, and maybe we'll brief you next week on how we think that meeting ought to be
Okay.
in terms of format, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So without objection, I will adjourn the planning commission meeting at 9:02. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.